One thing that you see play out every year during free agency is you find out what organizations really get it, what teams really get it, what front offices really get it, and then you find out what organizations, what teams, what front offices really don't get it. And some of them try to make the big splashy moves, and sometimes they work, and sometimes they really don't. But then you also find those teams that sit there and give way too much money over way too many years to way too many damn wrong players. And that is NFL free agency in a nutshell every single year. Free agency should not be used as a tool to build your team. It should be used as a tool ultimately to supplement your team, to bring in a difference maker here and a difference maker there, and occasionally provide some depth in some key places. But make no mistake about it, the best and most effective way proven out throughout the years to build your team, the best way to do that is through the NFL draft. And you see those teams that traditionally have drafted very poorly have to, by and large, roll the dice and gamble big time and overpay for talent in the free agent market, in large part due to those failures in the draft. And you see that play out time after time. Now, occasionally you'll have those teams that suffer because of free agency because they have drafted well or they have made shrewd moves and they can't afford to pay everybody, so they have to let some people go. And that also is just kind of the way things work. Now, I'm here to talk about some of the, excuse me, big free agent winners and the losers in this first week of the 2014 NFL free agency season, if you will. Let's start off with the winners. One team that I think helped itself quite a bit and a little bit under the radar is maybe the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not a huge fan of the Everson Griffin deal by any stretch of the imagination, but they are ready to move on from the Jared Allen experience, and it was probably time. It was probably best for all parties involved. Jared Allen's going to want way too much money for way too little production at his age, and the Vikings need to transition into something different, and it was time to let him go. As a result, I think they made a knee-jerk reaction ultimately and gave, like I said, Everson Griffin way too much damn money, but they did enough other moves to really help themselves, I feel. Re-signing Matt Castle to solid kind of backup quarterback money. That was a good, solid move. Keep some stability there in the organization that they need of kind of calming presence veteran that could, when called upon, maybe come in and win a game or two for you if you really need it. But I really like their signings of Linval Joseph and Captain Munnerlyn. Here's a defensive tackle in Linval Joseph that is that rare kind of dual threat in terms of he's a guy that could effectively play the run and he could be a difference maker as a pass rusher up the middle. A real weapon, somebody that I'm sure new head coach Mike Zimmer envisioned being his Geno Atkins there in Minnesota and very well could be that. So a great signing by them, and they didn't have to break the bank necessarily to do so. And as far as Captain Munnerlyn, now you compare him with Xavier Rhodes on the other side, and you have a nice 1-2 combination at corner, which is incredibly important when you're playing in the NFC North against teams like the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. You need to have that depth and talent in the secondary, and the Vikings definitely helped themselves out by getting somebody like a Captain Munnerlyn. Another team that I think did really well for themselves, frankly, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In part because that organization had drafted very poorly over the past several years. They had to, with a new head coach in Lovie Smith, hit the free agent market hard and aggressively, and that's what they did. They signed Michael Johnson, who some people are saying, well, he paid way too much money to a guy who doesn't really rush the passer all that well. Well, keep in mind, Lovie Smith's cover 2 system, his Tampa 2 system, is a little bit different than Tony Dungy's system in the sense that he actually prefers those defensive ends that can keep their contain a little better and play the run a little bit better. He likes and prefers his pass rush to come up the middle, which he had in Chicago with Tommy Harris and Tate Johnson, and he also had with the Henry Melton, and then in Tampa Bay now you have that with the Gerald McCoy, and if you compare somebody else up with him, that's where he prefers his pass rush to actually come from, is up the middle, not from the edges necessarily. That's a bit of a misconception. So Michael Johnson is a perfect fit for what Lovie Smith wants on his defense. They let Darrelle Revis go, saved themselves a ton of money, and brought in a player, frankly, that I feel plays a little bit better in that system and projects a little bit better in Lovie Smith's cover 2 system in Alteron Werner. So, they did have to pay a lot of money for Michael Johnson and Alteron Werner, sure, but those are two guys that I feel really fit that system very well. They also paid attention to the offensive side of the football. I love the signing of them for them of Josh McCown. He fits them very well. I love the fact that he's going to get a chance to start 2014. They're not going to sit there and really put too many eggs in the Mike Glennon basket because, let's face it, he was the pick of a failed regime in Dominic and Schiano. So why would you want to tie your future to a guy that was picked by somebody else that was a third-round pick and really didn't demonstrate anything special to necessitate a full-time shot in 2014? McCown's a veteran presence and somebody that you can bring in to kind of hold the ship until you draft a quarterback and he's ready to go. I love their signing of Evan Dietrich Smith. He improves the interior of their line. I love the fact that they cut Donald Penn and they signed Anthony Collins. It seems like it's an awful lot of money to pay an Anthony Collins, but the fact of the matter remains is that he played very well, I feel, in 2013 and could be a real bargain of a signing in a certain way for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and is definitely, to me at least, an upgrade over Donald Penn, where now the Bucs have put themselves in a position with the 7th overall pick in this draft where they could draft best available player, and I hope for all parties involved that ultimately ends up being Teddy Bridgewater from Louisville, who they would probably draft in a heartbeat. Another team that I think did really well for themselves is the New England Patriots. They allowed Aqib Talib to go to Denver to get a lot more money, and as a result, they brought in a better player at a cheaper price in Darrelle Revis. At a shorter term, too. It's a win-win-win all the way around for the New England Patriots. They know that the Denver Broncos are kind of those standard bearers right now in the AFC, and as a result, one of the things they have to do is they have to stop the Denver Broncos offense. And you bring in a Darrelle Revis, and then you sign a Brandon Browner, and you have done just that. You've gotten bigger. You've gotten much more physical outside of the cornerback position, which was something the New England Patriots were desperately lacking. They re-signed Julian Edelman, which was a good signing, a good re-signing for them because he really fits what Tom Brady's offense wants to do. And Brandon LaFell, some people might sit there and say they gave him a little bit too much, but the bottom line is I kind of like what they did, actually. I kind of like what they did with LaFell here because I think he's somebody that could really prosper with Tom Brady throwing him the football. In terms of losers, the Cleveland Browns are just losers because I fucking said they're losers. And they are losers because they do loser-type things. They allow T.J. Ward to leave via free agency because they're dumb. They ridiculously overpay for a Carlos Dansby because they're dumb. And a middle linebacker entering his mid-30s, and you're going to give him a ton of money? Sounds like typical Cleveland to me. Now, I do love the signing of Ben Tate for them. You know, the fact that they basically were only having to give him $7 million over 2 years for a running back that could come in and be a big-time player for them in their offense, that's a good thing. But again, it's the Cleveland Browns. They deserve to be called losers until proven otherwise. I thought they could have made a bigger splash here in free agency, and they just flat out did it. The Dallas Cowboys are losers because Jerry Jones is a fucking loser. Again, it's been 18 years since the Cowboys have made it to the Super Bowl, in large part because of Jerry Jones' complete incompetence as a general manager, team president, whatever you want to call him. The bottom line is he consistently puts his team in a disadvantageous position year in and year out through his complete mismanagement. His poor drafting is an incredible mismanagement of the salary cap. As a result, they weren't able to re-sign Jason Hatcher. They had to cut DeMarcus Ware, and now their team has gotten worse. Even more mediocre if that was possible. But the biggest losers of all in this free agency period have to be the Oakland Raiders because they were the Oakland Raiders. People were sitting there saying beforehand, and I think he even said that, I was really curious to see what Reggie McKenzie was going to do with almost $60 million in available salary cap space. And, you know, this was going to be a chance for the Raiders to really improve their team and then maybe follow it up with a strong draft and things could start looking bright for the Oakland Raiders. But no, Reggie McKenzie apparently is a big-time moron, just like his predecessor, needless to say. He has no clue what the hell he's doing. You sit there and you allow Lamar Houston to enter free agency for whatever the hell reason without having a better in-house option, without having any real plans to effectively replace him with an actual better player, and you just let him go to Chicago. And you weren't going to have to pay him a ton of money to keep him. Just dumb. And then you sit there and you allow Jared Veld here. You realize you have the franchise tag, right, you dumbass? You could sit there and use the franchise tag to keep Veld here, a legit left tackle who, yes, didn't play a ton in 2013, but damn it, he was the best offensive lineman you have. No, you allow him to leave in free agency, go to Arizona. It was a great deal for Arizona. And then you attempt to overpay for a Roger Saffold, a guy who has established he can't play left tackle and could barely play right tackle at the National Football League level. In fact, you may have been even projecting him to play right or left guard, in 2014. And you gave him more than Veld here money to not play Veldheer's position. And all the while, he couldn't even pass his freaking physical. And Mark Davis voided the deal because he realized Reggie McKenzie is a fucking moron. Then you sign Austin Howard for way too damn much over way too damn many. Then you sign guys like Justin Tuck and LaMarr Woodley, whose best football is clearly behind him. And in terms of Woodley, I don't even know if he fits what Oakland's trying to run on defense because it's been a long time since Woodley's played in a 4-3. You know, the Terrell Brown signing aside, the re-signing of Darren McFadden aside, in general, it just showed me that Reggie McKenzie is clearly in over his head and has no clue what the hell he's doing, and it's more business as usual for the Oakland Raiders. Now, in terms of my Chicago Bears, they're not really winners or losers. I like the signing of Lamar Houston. I love the fact that they were able to cut Julius Peppers. I love the fact that they were able to re-sign Matt Slauson and Tim Jennings before the season was over, so that they've got them in the fold for a few more years. I really, really like the signing of Willie Young. They didn't have to give him a ton of money, and you've weakened a divisional rival in Detroit. You've taken one of their starters off of their defensive line, and he's a guy who's still ticking upward. I love Houston's versatility, and I love Young's explosiveness on the outside, potentially as an edge rusher. I'm not a fan of the signings of Mundy and M.D. Jennings because I think they're not upgrades. They're lateral, if not downgrade moves from the safeties you had in Major Wright and Chris Conte. I like that they re-signed DJ Williams because Jonathan Bostic sucks and is in no way, shape, or form ready to play middle linebacker at the National Football League level. But ultimately, the one team that everybody's going to talk about in free agency is the Denver Broncos. And you're going to hear a lot of the media types, a lot of fans are going to be ready to crown their asses. Now, on paper, it looks like the Broncos have made some big-time moves and addressed some deficiency areas. By signing an Aqib Talib to a big deal, now you've got a legit shutdown type of cover corner. They needed help in the secondary still. They signed a TJ Ward to a very reasonable contract. So now you have significantly upgraded at safety, it seems like. And you were able to get DeMarcus Ware away from Dallas after they cut him. You gave him money, and now it would appear like everybody's going to fantasize about the possibilities of a DeMarcus Ware and a Von Miller both rushing the passer in Denver. So on the surface, everybody realizes that John Elway's all in, and he has to be, and I don't blame him for the philosophy and stance that he has taken. It is the time to win now. Damn the future. You have to do it, and you have to take these chances, and you have to do everything you can to win a Super Bowl in this 2014 season, because that might be the only chance that you have. However, with all of that being said, let's not crown their asses just yet. This is a team that's already lost Eric Decker to free agency, and you could say what you want, but the bottom line is Eric Decker's a very good NFL wide receiver, and he's not just all that easy to replace. And they definitely don't have the in-house option to replace him at this point in time. They're probably going to lose Noshawn Moreno via free agency, and as a result, now you're putting the burden on guys like Monte Ball and Ronnie Hillman, who flashed some stuff at times, but they didn't demonstrate a consistent ability to be a big-time ball carrier and somebody that Peyton Manning could really rely upon week in and week out as a running back out of the backfield. And then you look at the fact that they have signed a DeMarcus Ware, a guy entering his 30s, he's actually in his early 30s, who you're not signing the 3-4 outside linebacker DeMarcus Ware, you're signing the 4-3 defensive end DeMarcus Ware, who didn't play all that incredibly well in that system in 2013 and had some injury troubles to boot. He's losing a step, he's getting older, and he's not playing his best ideal position as a 4-3 defensive end. So let's not crown their asses just yet. When you look at TJ Ward, yes, he's an upgrade at safety, but they really needed help in terms of safeties that could cover, and TJ Ward can't cover. He's an in-the-box, one-dimensional, run-stuffing safety. So, yes, he was a good value, but how much did he really help the Denver Broncos secondary ultimately? And when you look at Aqib Talib, this is a guy that's gotten hurt, in the past couple of AFC championship games. Is he really an upgrade over Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie? I don't really know. And he certainly isn't a better corner than a Darrelle Revis, who the Patriots were able to sign for cheaper money for a shorter period of time than the Broncos were with Aqib Talib. I get the concept of Elway wanting to roll the dice because he has to, because he has no choice. But the bottom line is I'm not going to crown the Denver Broncos asses. They're losing some players on offense that are not just that easy to replace. And then on the defensive side of the football, would you rather have had a DeMarcus Ware or a Jared Allen or Julius Peppers? Would you have rather had a TJ Ward, or would you have rather really tried to break the bank to go get a Jairus Byrd? Would you have rather had a Aqib Talib, or would you have rather have had a Darrelle Revis? So while these signings look good on the surface, they might not be what you crack them out to be. And that's the truth of the matter. So I won't call the Broncos winners, and I won't call them losers. I applaud Elway's aggressiveness here because he has no choice. The time to do it is now. but I'm sure as hell not about to crown their asses. And I still stand by what I said before, and that is the Denver Broncos will not make it to Super Bowl 49. And these moves don't help get them any closer, frankly.